The morning sunlight broke through the airplane window as Nathan adjusted his seat upright and glanced over at Emily, who was still dozing lightly. Her wavy brunette hair had fallen across her face, and her fingers, adorned with a new wedding ring, rested gently on the edge of her blanket. Nathan smiled softly. The last 2 weeks had been nothing short of perfect. A honeymoon in Santorini filled with laughter, quiet dinners under lantern-lit terraces, and lazy mornings wrapped in white hotel sheets. They had left the chaos of wedding planning behind, and now, after months of stress, they were finally heading home to start their life as husband and wife. He had imagined this moment 100 times, coming home together, carrying in their bags, maybe ordering takeout while unpacking, tossing laundry into piles on the floor, joking about which side of the bed was now officially whose. Normal life. Shared life. The plane landed smoothly at Heathrow, and after navigating the usual slow crawl of customs and baggage claim, they finally stepped into a cab. Emily leaned into Nathan's shoulder during the ride, murmuring about wanting a hot shower and maybe some Chinese food for dinner. Nathan kissed the top of her head. Everything felt right. Comfortable. It wasn't until they stepped out of the cab in front of their flat, a modest but cozy second-floor apartment in a quiet London neighborhood, that the first crack appeared. Nathan pulled his key from the side pocket of his carry-on, turned the lock, and nothing happened. He frowned. Tried again. Still nothing. Emily gave him a confused look. Maybe you're using the wrong key? He shook his head. No, this is the one. I always use this one. Nathan tried again, more forcefully this time. The key wouldn't even go in fully now. I don't understand, he muttered, trying to spare on his keychain. Same result. Emily stepped forward, knocking gently on the door as if it would magically open. That's weird. Maybe something's jammed? Just then, an older neighbor from across the hallway peeked out from behind her door. Emily? The woman called gently. Emily turned. Misgaed. Sorry for the noise. Something's wrong with the lock. We just got back from our honeymoon. Oh dear, the woman interrupted, stepping a bit closer and lowering her voice. Your mom was here last week, with some man from a locksmith service. They changed the locks while you were away. I assumed you knew. Nathan felt like the air had been punched out of his lungs. Emily's face drained of color. What? Miss Garrett looked uncomfortable. She said there was an emergency. Something about a family matter and protecting the property. I didn't want to interfere. Nathan took a slow breath, forcing his voice to stay calm. Did she say anything else? She mentioned something like, my daughter made a mistake marrying him, and I won't let her regret it in silence. I didn't quite understand. Emily looked like she was about to faint. Nathan put an arm around her, steadying her. Let's go to the cafe across the street. Sit down. Call your mom. They sat in the corner of the quiet cafe, 2 cappuccinos untouched on the table. Nathan stared at the screen of Emily's phone as she dialed her mother's number with trembling fingers. It rang once, twice, then answered. Emily, came Diane's crisp voice. I was expecting this call. Why did you change our locks? Emily asked, voice cracking. Diane's tone didn't soften. Because I had to. You were too swept up in that fantasy to see the truth. Nathan is not right for you. You don't get to make that decision. Emily whispered. That's not your home. It's ours. Diane scoffed. You mean his. Don't be naive. That lease isn't his name. Everything in there belongs to him. I won't let my daughter be reduced to a dependent in her own marriage. You deserve better. Someone with a proper career, ambition. Not someone playing creative consultant from a laptop in cafes. Nathan's hands curled into fists under the table, but he didn't speak. He just listened. Emily was crying now. You went into our home. Without permission. I did what I had to do, Diane snapped. You'll thank me later. You can come stay with me until you see sense. The line went dead. Emily stared at her phone like she didn't recognize it. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Nathan leaned forward slowly. It's okay. We'll deal with it. One step at a time. They sat in silence for several minutes before Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed the number for a nearby hotel. He booked a room for the night and then called the landlord, hoping to get answers. Emily wiped her face, trying to pull herself together. I didn't know she'd do something like this. I believe you, Nathan said, but we're not going back there tonight. You need time to think, and I need to talk to a solicitor in the morning. You're not mad? I'm furious, he admitted, but not at you, and not enough to lose control. This is bigger than today. She's crossed too many lines already. It's time we draw our own. That night in the hotel, while Emily cried herself into an uneasy sleep, Nathan sat at the desk, laptop open, typing. He began writing down every instance he could remember of Diane inserting herself into their relationship. The time she refused to attend their engagement party unless it was moved to a venue she approved. The unsolicited advice on how Emily deserved a man who could provide stability. The snide comments about Nathan's job not being a real career. He collected screenshots, messages, emails. He organized everything into a folder labeled for legal review. This wasn't just about a lock. This was about a pattern, a belief that Diane could control her daughter's life indefinitely. And Nathan had decided, quietly and clearly, that it stopped here. The locks had been changed. The message was sent loud and clear. You are not welcome. But Diane didn't realize something yet. She wasn't the one with legal standing. And Nathan wasn't going to fight her with rage. He was going to fight her with facts. Not because he was vengeful, but because he respected his marriage too much to let it be dictated by someone else's fear and arrogance. In the dim light of the hotel desk lamp, with the city humming outside, Nathan typed into the night. Not for revenge, for resolution, for protection, and for a home that no one, not even a mother-in-law, had the right to steal. The next morning, Nathan awoke early, long before the sun had fully risen over the skyline outside the hotel room window. He hadn't slept more than a few hours, and his mind still pulsed with the sharp clarity that only injustice could bring. Emily was still asleep, curled beneath the duvet, her face pale and tense even in rest. Nathan studied her quietly for a moment. This wasn't the kind of beginning either of them had imagined. And yet, here they were, not even a full day back from their honeymoon, already pushed into a battle neither of them asked for. He stepped out of bed and walked to the small table by the window. His laptop was still open, its screen dark. He tapped the spacebar and the screen glowed to life, revealing the neatly organized folder he'd labeled Diane, Legal Personal Incidents. Inside it, he placed every message, screenshot, and memory he could gather from the past 2 years. Now it was time to go deeper. By 8 a.m., Nathan had drafted a formal email to their landlord, Mark Hennessy, whose office was located just a few streets away from the apartment. The lease had always been under Nathan's name. Emily had moved in with him 6 months before the wedding, but the legal agreement and every utility bill still bore his signature. He briefly explained the situation, that someone had impersonated either him or Emily to change the locks during their absence, and he needed clarification on who authorized the change. He hit send. Less than an hour later, Nathan's phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Hey, Nathan. Got your message," Mark said in a low, cautious voice. "Listen, I was going to reach out to you anyway. This is about the lock change?" "Yes," Nathan replied, trying to keep his voice level. "We came back yesterday and couldn't get into the apartment. My mother-in-law changed the locks without our knowledge." "Well, she claimed to be acting on behalf of you and your wife," Mark said. "She said there was a family emergency, and your wife, Emily, authorized her to handle the situation." Nathan clenched his jaw. Did she provide anything? A signed document? A power of attorney? Mark hesitated. "She showed me a text message from a number saved as Emily, but it was vague. Just said something like, 'Please help my mom with whatever she needs while we're away.' Honestly, I thought it was strange, but she was very convincing. Older woman, dressed very proper. She said you'd be grateful when you returned." Nathan took a deep breath. That message was not from Emily. I'm going to need a copy of everything she presented. Texts, ID, the locksmith's name, anything you have. "I'll get it to you this afternoon," Mark promised. "And I'm sorry, Nathan. If I'd known this was unauthorized." "I get it," Nathan interrupted. "She manipulated you. You're not the only one." After ending the call, Nathan sat back in his chair, staring at the phone in his hands. His mind drifted back to the first time he met Diane. It was at a small dinner 2 years ago, not long after he and Emily had begun seeing each other seriously. Diane had arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, ordered a glass of white wine before they even sat down, and immediately began asking questions about his income, his family background, and what his long-term goals were. At the time, Nathan had thought she was just being protective. Now he saw it differently. Diane wasn't trying to protect her daughter. She was trying to control her. And Emily had spent most of her life so accustomed to that control, she didn't even see it anymore. When Emily finally woke up, she found Nathan already showered and dressed, sitting at the edge of the bed with a file open in his hands. "What's that?" she asked sleepily. "Proof," he said, handing her the tablet. "Everything I've gathered so far. Messages, emails, landlord statements. I just got off the phone with Mark. Your mother impersonated you to get those locks changed. She showed him a message that wasn't from you. He'll send me everything later today." Emily sat up, rubbing her eyes, clearly still emotionally hung over from the previous night. She faked a message? Yes. Or used one taken out of context. Either way, she misled the landlord. That's impersonation, and it's illegal. Emily pulled her knees up under the blanket. I didn't think she'd go this far. Nathan studied her. That's the problem. She's always gone too far. This time, we just can't ignore it anymore. Emily looked down, guilt crossing her face like a shadow. I should have set boundaries. Years ago. But every time I tried, she'd guilt trip me. She'd say I was ungrateful or abandoning her after everything she sacrificed raising me alone. I thought maybe after the wedding, she'd calm down. I really thought she'd learn to accept you. Nathan leaned forward. She's not going to accept me, Emily. Not until she's forced to accept that she no longer controls your life. Emily hesitated. What are you going to do? I've already started, he said. This isn't about punishing her. It's about making sure this never happens again. I'm contacting a solicitor today. We'll get a formal letter sent. She has no legal standing in our lives or our property. And if she doesn't respect that, then we escalate. Emily looked conflicted. That's my mother, Nathan. And you're my wife, he said gently. This is your call. But I need you to understand. If we let her get away with this, she'll keep doing it. We'll never have peace. Not in our home. Not in our marriage. The silence between them lingered for a long moment. Then Emily reached for his hand. Okay, I'm with you. Later that afternoon, Mark emailed Nathan with scanned copies of the text Diane had shown him. It confirmed everything. Diane had fabricated a message by changing a contact name in her phone. The message had clearly been sent by Diane herself from another phone she owned. The trick was basic but effective. She had typed out a message as if from Emily, then saved it under Emily's name and showed it to the landlord. Nathan forwarded the evidence to a solicitor he had worked with years earlier during a business partnership dispute. The man, Oliver Trent, was sharp and unflinching. When Oliver called, he didn't mince words. What your mother-in-law did was a civil violation at minimum, possibly criminal depending on how aggressive you want to be. We can issue a cease and desist, demand return of keys, and potentially file for damages or restraining orders if this escalates. Will this go to court? Nathan asked. Unlikely, Oliver replied. Most people back down once they realize they've crossed into legal territory. But it's your call on how far we push. Nathan nodded. Start with the letter. I don't want to go nuclear unless she forces us. That evening, after a quiet dinner in the hotel room, Emily sat cross-legged on the bed flipping through the folder Nathan had compiled. Every incident laid out before her. Texts from Diane telling her to marry someone with real ambition. Emails subtly undermining Nathan's career. Messages complaining that Emily spent too much time playing house instead of visiting her mother. Emily's face grew darker as she read. I didn't realize how often she did this. She whispered. I thought I was being dramatic when I got upset. But this is constant. It's manipulation. Nathan sat beside her. You weren't imagining it. She's been chipping away at you for years. Emily wiped her eyes again. How'd I let get this far? Because you wanted to believe she had your best interest at heart. That's not weakness. That's being human. Emily looked up at him. I don't want to live like this anymore. You don't have to, he said. We'll take back our home, and we'll set rules. She can either respect them or stay out of our lives. Emily nodded. I'll call her tomorrow, and I'll tell her myself. Nathan exhaled, not with relief, but with resolve. Because this wasn't just about proving who had the legal right to the apartment. It was about reclaiming their marriage from a shadow that had loomed over it since the beginning. Diane had crossed the line, and now Finally, Emily was ready to draw one of her own. The following morning brought with it a weight in the air that neither Nathan nor Emily could shake. There were no longer tears or questions about why her mother would do something so intrusive and cruel. Those moments had passed. Now, there was only the quiet pressure of action, of necessary steps forward. Emily stood by the hotel room window, cradling a cup of tea in both hands, staring at the blurred skyline of London beyond the street glass. Nathan sat on the edge of the bed behind her, phone in hand, reading over the draft cease and desist letter Oliver had prepared. It was formal, direct, and unambiguous. It stated that Diane Renshaw had unlawfully accessed and altered a residential property without the consent or knowledge of the leaseholder, that she had impersonated a party to the lease, and that any further contact or attempts to interfere in the private life and property of Nathan and Emily Lewis would result in legal action. It also demanded the immediate return of the apartment keys and warned against continued trespassing. Nathan read it silently twice, then handed the phone to Emily without a word. She took it slowly, read the letter in full, then closed her eyes and leaned her forehead against the glass. "Send it," she whispered. "You're sure?" She nodded. "She's left me no choice." Nathan sent the letter immediately. It was emailed and also scheduled for physical delivery by courier to Diane's address. That single act didn't change anything immediately, but it was the first unshakable line in the sand. Later that morning, Emily called her mother. The call didn't last long, less than 5 minutes. Diane answered with her usual clipped politeness, perhaps expecting a daughter still uncertain, still pliable. But she didn't get that Emily. She got a version of her daughter she hadn't heard before, clear, trembling, but unwavering. "You broke into our home, Mom. You pretended to be me. You manipulated people and tried to split us up because you don't like who I married. You crossed the line. I'm not asking for your permission anymore. I'm asking for your distance." Diane didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply hung up. Emily stared at the phone for a long moment after the call ended, then placed it face down on the table and left it there. "She's not going to stop," she said. "But now she knows I will." That same afternoon, Nathan and Emily returned to their apartment, this time accompanied by Mark the landlord and a locksmith. The locks Diane had changed were removed, and a new set, chosen by Nathan and authorized in writing, were installed. Emily stood silently in the hallway during the process, watching the door like it was some symbolic gate she had to reclaim. Once the work was done and the new keys handed over, Mark offered them both an awkward but sincere apology. "I should have verified more thoroughly. I didn't know it would lead to this." "It's okay," Nathan replied. "She manipulated you. That's what she does." They stepped into their apartment together, the door clicking shut behind them. Everything inside looked just as it had when they left 2 weeks ago. The framed photos on the shelves, their shared books in uneven stacks near the TV, Emily's half-finished painting propped up in the corner of the living room. But something about it felt invaded now. The air felt disturbed, touched. Emily moved from room to room slowly, brushing her fingers over the familiar surfaces like she was checking for ghosts. In the bedroom, she opened drawers, then checked her closet, pulling aside clothes as if something might be missing. Then she paused at her bedside table. "She opened my journal," she said. Nathan looked up from unpacking their bags. She creased a page. "I don't do that." He stepped toward her, putting a hand on her back. "We'll clean it. Not just the space. Everything. New sheets, new pillows. We'll make it ours again." They spent the rest of the day doing just that. They opened every window, washed every fabric, rearranged furniture, even if only slightly. Nathan took down Diane's framed photo from the hallway shelf and placed it in a drawer without comment. Emily didn't object. It was an unspoken agreement. The emotional reset had begun. That evening, Oliver called again. Diane had responded to the letter through a solicitor of her own, a brief message declaring that she acted in the best interest of her daughter, denied impersonation, and claimed she had Emily's verbal blessing to act during their absence. But the reply had a hesitant tone, clearly aware of the legal boundaries that had been crossed. "She's backing off," Oliver said. "This is the moment where she'll either retreat or escalate. If she escalates, we're ready." But my bet is she's testing whether you're serious. Now she knows. Let her know we are, Nathan replied. Send a final note. No contact unless Emily initiates it. And no entry to the property. Ever again. After hanging up, Nathan turned to find Emily curled up on the couch, an untouched glass of wine on the side table, eyes distant. I've been trying to fix her my whole life, she said softly. You're not broken. She is, Nathan answered. Emily didn't respond immediately. Then she said, when I was 12, she threw away all the clothes my dad had left for me. Just said they were too small, too old. But they weren't. Some of it still fit. A sweatshirt, a jacket. I didn't understand why until now. Nathan sat down beside her. Control. She couldn't handle reminders of anything that wasn't hers to rewrite. You kept trying to make peace with someone who didn't want peace, just obedience. Emily leaned into him. I don't think she'll apologize. She won't. But that doesn't mean you have to accept what she did. There was a long pause before she whispered, I need time. You have it. In the days that followed, their home slowly reclaimed its comfort. Emily removed several items her mother had given them as wedding gifts. Fancy candle holders, a decorative mirror, even the teacups they never really liked. Nathan didn't say anything about it. He just helped carry things to the donation box. Together, they made small but deliberate changes. New curtains, a fresh coat of paint on the hallway wall, even a trip to IKEA for some lighthearted shopping. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about identity, about taking back the space and making it theirs again. On Sunday evening, as they sat eating Thai takeout in front of the television, Emily reached for Nathan's hand. I know she's still going to try, she said. Maybe not right away, but eventually. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. Then we'll deal with it when she does. Together. Emily nodded. This whole time, I kept thinking you were the one who had to prove yourself to her. But really it was me. I needed to prove that I could choose my own life. You just did, he said. And that night, for the first time since they returned from their honeymoon, they both slept through the night. No nightmares, no tension. Just the steady rhythm of trust and rebuilding. The war wasn't over. But the first real victory had been won. Not in court, not in paperwork, but in Emily's quiet refusal to be manipulated any longer. That, more than anything, was the shift that truly mattered. By the following week, life had settled into something resembling normal again, at least on the surface. The apartment, once shadowed by Diane's intrusion, had started to feel like home again. It no longer carried the invisible trace of her judgment in the air. The couch was where Nathan and Emily watched movies on quiet nights. The kitchen was once more theirs alone. No one moved the mugs to different shelves or left judgmental post-it notes about cleanliness or food choices. It was peaceful, and it felt earned. But the peace was not entirely uninterrupted. 3 days after the final legal letter was delivered to Diane's solicitor, a bouquet of white lilies arrived at the apartment, no note attached. Emily found them at the doorstep and stared at them for a long time before finally bringing them in. She didn't put them in water. She left them on the kitchen counter, still wrapped in the crinkled paper from the florist. She's trying to worm her way back in, Emily said flatly when Nathan got home from work and saw the flowers. He nodded. It's not an apology. It's a test. She tossed them in the bin after dinner, wordlessly. The next evening brought an email. Not to Emily, but to Nathan. Sent from Diane's personal address. The subject line simply read, a conversation, not a confrontation. Nathan hesitated before opening it. The message was short but laced with a passive-aggressive elegance that Diane had mastered over the years. Nathan, I hope you'll hear me out, as one adult to another. I realize things have escalated. That was never my intention. I only ever wanted what was best for Emily. If you truly care about her as you claim, then you'll agree that communication, not lawyers, should be the way forward. I propose a face-to-face conversation. Just you and me. No hostility, no shouting. A civilized resolution. Diane. Nathan stared at the message for a long time, fingers hovering over the keyboard. When Emily saw it, she didn't speak for a while. Then she said, You should go. He turned to her in surprise. What? You should hear what she has to say. Not because I want you to give her a chance, but because I think she's finally realizing she pushed too far. She won't say it out loud, but this is her first real attempt to backpedal. And part of me needs to know that you can face her, not as someone she can control or manipulate, but as someone who won't bend. Nathan agreed, but on one condition: he would meet Diane in a public place, and he would record the conversation. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Emily agreed. The meeting was set for that Saturday, at a quiet corner table in a hotel cafe Diane had chosen. She arrived on time, dressed immaculately as always, wearing a cream blouse and a navy coat, her silver hair pinned perfectly at the back. She smiled as Nathan approached, but he didn't smile back. They sat. The waiter took their drink orders. Then silence. Diane finally broke it. "I didn't come to fight." "Then speak," Nathan said calmly. Diane folded her hands on the table. "I'll be honest. I didn't think the two of you would last a year. And I'll admit, I made choices I thought would accelerate what I saw as the inevitable. But I miscalculated. You're not weak. And Emily, she's more stubborn than I gave her credit for." Nathan said nothing, letting the silence press against her like weight. She went on. "I was scared. I saw her slipping away. I've been her only family since she was 6 years old. I gave everything to raise her. And suddenly, she was building a life with someone else. Someone I didn't choose. Someone who didn't come from the world I imagined for her. Her life isn't yours to direct," Nathan said. "I know that now," Diane replied, surprising him with the lack of venom. "But understanding it doesn't make it easier to accept. I made mistakes. And the truth is, I'm tired, Nathan. Tired of fighting a war I've already lost. I don't want to be shut out. I want a chance to step back in without pretending to be someone I'm not." Nathan studied her face. For the first time, she looked her age. Her eyes didn't gleam with cold certainty. They were softer now, guarded but no longer defiant. "If you want to be part of our lives," he said, "you come on our terms. No surprise visits. No more manipulation. You speak to Emily directly, and you respect boundaries." "I can try," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He stood. "That's all we need. An effort, not control. If you cross the line again, there won't be another meeting." Diane nodded. Nathan walked away with a strange mixture of relief and skepticism. He didn't fully trust her, but something in her tone had changed. Maybe age was humbling her, or maybe it was loneliness. But he wasn't going to let empathy override caution. When he returned home and told Emily everything, she listened quietly, then asked, "Do you think she meant it?" "I think she's trying to survive the consequences," Nathan answered. "And that might be as close to remorse as she gets." Emily didn't cry. She didn't spiral into doubt. She simply stood, walked to the drawer where she'd placed her mother's photo, and looked at it for a long moment. Then she shut the drawer again without taking the photo out. 2 months passed without incident. Diane didn't call, didn't show up, didn't send flowers. Then one day, Emily received a letter. Not an email, not a text, but a handwritten note delivered to their mailbox. It read, "Emily, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you will remember that everything I did, even the worst of it, came from love twisted into fear. I see that now, and I'm trying to untangle it. If you ever want to talk, I'll listen this time. Mom." Emily stared at the letter for a long time. Then she folded it, placed it in her journal, and said nothing more about it that evening. She didn't call her mother, but she didn't tear the letter up either. The space between them had grown. But this time, it was filled with something different, not control or blame, but silence that held the potential for something else. In the end, there was no dramatic reconciliation, no teary embrace or sweeping apology. There was just a slow rebalancing, a tentative rebuilding not based on obligation or guilt, but choice. Nathan and Emily celebrated their 6-month anniversary with a quiet weekend away by the coast. They walked along the cliffs, cooked simple meals, and slept with the windows open to hear the waves. For the first time in months, they talked about the future, not as something to protect, but something to welcome. When they returned to the apartment, it felt even more like home. A place they had fought for, a place they had claimed together. Emily hung a new photo in the hallway, not of her mother, but of her and Nathan, laughing during their honeymoon, sand in their hair, sun in their eyes. A real memory, untouched. And the locks? They stayed changed, not just on the door, but in their hearts, too. Reset, reinforced, and finally secure.